Hello everyone, this is Godzilla with One, and I'm back with another video. This time one of my discussion videos, which you guys really seem to like, and this one will be about Sonic Forces, which, as you can probably tell by the fact I'm using my own live stream over this to avoid any kind of potential weird copyright issues or using other people's footage that I do not own. Forgive me that I cannot show the cutscenes because SEGA decided to be a giant jerk about it and block literally every cutscene in this game, up to and including the credits. SEGA, you're being jerks about that. No one cares. Just unblock the cutscenes already. But regardless of my vitriol towards SEGA's scene blocking, I actually don't have the vitriol towards this game a lot of people do. I personally rather enjoyed it. I do think it's a middle-of-the-road Sonic game hampered by poor implementation of really cool ideas, but I don't hate it. I actually really enjoy this game. But the thing is, like, a lot of people have this broken base about the mascot villain of this game, Infinite, who will be the main topic of this discussion. And the thing is, there's kind of three camps with Infinite. You either really like him for being this cool, edgy character, you really hate him for being an underwhelming, edgy character, or you think he's a cool character with poor execution. There are probably more camps than that. Those are just the main ones that I know of. But the thing is, I really like Infinite. I think he's a good villain. But I think he's a good villain for the very reason a lot of people hate him. Which is kind of weird to say, but the reason I feel that way is I honestly feel he is a parody Sue. Now, if you do not know what a parody Sue is, it is essentially a character who is written with many Mary Sue traits. You know, the perfect, flawless character who this story seems to supernaturally bend around to make as good as possible. Well, a parody Sue is a parody of that. And the ironic thing is that a lot of people don't know is actually the original Mary Sue from A Trekkie's Tale published in House Treks number 5, actually, which was back when they would actually publish fanfics in these magazines. The thing is, it was originally a parody Sue. The trope namer for the idea of a Mary Sue was originally a parody of the ones that had been showing up before the trope was even named. So kind of interesting that I'd be discussing both tropes at once here, but essentially I think that Infinite is a parody of a villain Sue. Now, a villain Sue is this all-powerful, really awesome, typically extremely edgy fanfiction villain who somehow manages to curb stomp even the most powerful characters in this setting, and it makes all the villains, even the really powerful ones, bow before their might. And if that kind of sounds like Infinite's introductory cutscene, that's exactly my point, because he's introduced, you know, curb stomping Sonic, has curb stomped Omega in the past, manages to get one over on Shadow, and beat Silver, so, you know, you got that going for him. Then you've got the fact he seems to have all these, like, Legion of Doom behind him that consists of all these powerful villains, which, ironically enough, was originally supposed to include Mephiles the Dark from Sonic 06, but they cut that, most likely because it would make absolutely no sense, because Mephiles no longer exists and was erased from the timeline, so he would not make any sense to be here. But essentially, the idea of Infinite having control of all these bad guys, being this black and red, edgy, super awesome villain who's constantly talking about how awesome he is, talking down to Robotnik, ruling all these other villains, curb stomping all the heroes. That is essentially exactly what a villain Sue typically does. Like, everything that Infinite has is essentially a villain Sue. But he also has one other thing, and that's the fact that none of it is real. I mean, to a degree, it is real, and there we have our blocked cutscenes, which is why I can't actually show the cutscene I'm talking about. Thank you, SEGA, because I don't want to take from other people's videos. I might just show a static image of it on screen, because my editing software will allow me to do that. But the thing is that Infinite's ultimate power is that he's a master of illusion. Like, yes, there are illusions that can hurt you, but literally nothing he does is actually real. When he creates everything, all those villains, they're fake. Him being faster than Sonic, that's fake. Him being as powerful as he says he is, all fake. It's all the Phantom Ruby. And as we find out later on, even him claiming to be more powerful than Robotnik and talking down to Robotnik, it turns out Robotnik, spoilers for the end of the game, though this game's been out for so long you probably don't care, he essentially is able to just shut down Infinite, like, without any effort at all. Like, Infinite loses the final fight, and Robotnik's like, okay, you failed me for the last time, you screwed up everything. Bye-bye. I have finally learned my lesson about trying to control things stronger than me and have a button to shut you down at a moment's notice. And that's basically the big thing with Infinite, is he's actually really, really pathetic. Like, underneath everything, he's driven by an inferiority-superiority complex, and he's just doing all this because Shadow bruised his ego. Now, like, yes, Shadow also killed his squad, at least that's what's implied, but at the same time, he didn't really even seem to care all that much about him and seemed to already be a psychopath from what we know of his origins. So, essentially what you have here is a psychopathic bully who is only as powerful as he is by being given an artifact he doesn't even control, and is ultimately all of his bravado and talking himself up is solely because he is trying to make up for his bruised ego. And that ultimately is why I like Infinite, because he is essentially a perfect parody of a villain Sue. And it actually goes a little deeper than that, with the fact that Infinite ultimately is driven by not just his own ego, but a need for sadism and all of that, which typically villain Sues in bad fanfics are incredibly sadistic, incredibly spiteful, petty, everything, because they're poorly written villains. But in Infinite's case, that not only works with his character, because that is basically his core character trait, is that he has to assert his dominance and assert his authority and make himself look good and make himself feel better by putting others down. Again, he's a bully. But the thing is, his sadism royally screws his side over. And if you look at everything, every time he decides to indulge in his sadism and ego, it screws Eggman over, and even Eggman is aware of it. Like, Eggman outright tells Infinite that his ego and playing with his food is going to screw them over. And it does, multiple times. And again, that's the parody Sue aspect of Infinite. Is for all of him talking himself up, all of his trying to look really powerful and tough, at the end of the day, Infinite is just a pathetic bully whose sadism makes him think he can get away with a lot of stuff that he really can't, that ultimately bites him in the butt. Where in an actual villain Sue played straight, that villain Sue would be able to just indulge their sadism all they want, never have to really pay the consequences for it or anything like that, where, well, and Infinite isn't just a parody, he's a deconstruction. And deconstruction does get overused as a term a lot, but in this case I feel it is warranted because deconstruction is to take something apart. And in this case it is taken thoroughly and completely apart. Because every trait that makes Infinite like a villain Sue, ultimately in some way or shape or form, is either pathetic or backfires completely on him. He is pathetic because he is a bully, and that is the source of his pride and ego and constantly bragging about himself. He is a deconstruction of the sadism aspect because his sadism just does nothing but screw him over. Him and Eggman over. He is not pragmatic because he is petty. So every single trait that Infinite has ultimately is deconstructed, and it's a deconstruction of the villain Sue archetype. Which I honestly believe was fully intentional on the creator's part, because again, people say, oh, he looked like an OC, red and black OC villain. And I think that was honestly completely intentional. I think that Infinite succeeds in exactly what he's supposed to be, which is a deconstruction or parody of a villain Sue. And that's personally why I actually like Infinite, because I find that extremely amusing. Granted, I wish they'd done a lot more with the Phantom Ruby's power, been a lot more creative with it, and generally just done a lot more with it, especially at the end when it's not Infinite controlling it, because I will say the city, then the second boss fight with Infinite is the best part of the game, where they really use the Phantom Ruby to its fullest, but that's the only time they do it. And I do feel that is a genuine fault of the writing and of the game developing, and essentially everything about Infinite's characters' faults that are actual faults is the fact that they don't use the Phantom Ruby to its fullest. But I think, honestly, the faults that a lot of people rag on him about were entirely intentional. Yes, he is pathetic. That's probably intentional. Yes, he doesn't live up to his own hype. Again, he's just a edgy bully. And I think ultimately at the end of the day, that is what Infinite is supposed to be. He is meant to just be an edgy bully and a parody deconstruction of the villain Sue idea. Which, really, I wish they'd gotten to do more with this game. I get the feeling that this game had a lot of executive meddling behind the scenes, and I have heard that is indeed the case. So I do imagine they probably originally did intend to be a lot more creative with a lot of this stuff. But I ultimately think that Infinite's not all that bad of a character. I think he actually is essentially intentionally exactly what he is, a parody deconstruction of a villain Sue. And if you do not agree with me, that's perfectly fine. I am perfectly fine with people not agreeing with me so long as you're respectful in your opinion. If you still hate Infinite, even though even after this video, and I haven't changed your mind, perfectly fine. No problems there. If you don't like Sonic Forces with a red-hot passion and disagree that it's not that bad of a game, also perfectly fine. I respect your opinion. Just please respect mine. And anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, like, comment, subscribe. See you guys next time. Bye! I still don't have a catchphrase.